if you do fail, please fail gracefully. It is okay to fail. Not just okay to fail, it is necessary to fail. Because if you have all the wins all the time, it you're not really building the right thing. You're pushing. You're not pushing hard enough. You don't have the resistance. So it's okay to fail because then you're taking risks.
So tell me a little bit about your backstory, man. How did you first get into technology?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I'll do that. So my story is not very similar, but a little similar to yours. I was growing up. I was always a tinkerer. Was a very tech savvy guy. We grew up in a very humble household, but I always had a lot of access to a lot of books via friends, family, libraries, and I used to always read a lot. And always got into figuring things out, how things work, getting into the innards of tools. Devices and appliances and whatnot. And then I got my first computer when I was in like sixth grade, I think mid 90s, late 90s. And it was like, whoa, mind blowing time, right? And then I started, there was a magazine that used to come to my house it was a monthly periodical. And in that, it mentioned like HTML, the big thing. And I was like, whoa, what is HTML? And I started looking into it. And that's how I got introduced to DHTML at that time, which was basically the earlier version of JavaScript. And then I started tinkering with it. And in, I think, eighth grade, I built my first website. And I remember very nicely, it was something called tripod.com, where you build your HTML, you do FTP upload, you put in your scripts in a certain directory, and then try to, I think vaguely remember, you have to merge it and whatnot. And then understanding what DNS is at that point, a website name and whatnot. So that's how my whole tech thing started. But I grew up in a certain city where at that point hardware or electronics was like the big thing, right? So for my undergrad, I chose that. For my undergrad, I went into electronics and telecommunications. I had some subjects on programming, but not too many. But I remember in my third year, I worked on a very, very large personal project, as something that we were asked to do something really small, but I was over ambitious. It failed drastically, but I was over ambitious, went into building a large project. I had like microcontrollers and timing chips. And if I remember it correctly, the 8081, 8234, all those chips and build the hardware. And given that it was a very sophisticated at that point solution, I had to write a lot of software, and that was written in assembly language. So at that point, I realized that, hey, hardware is really cool and great, and obviously it's necessary, but software is fast. You can make changes, and you can get that instant gratification, which you can't do that in software, right? I remember changing something means, figuring out the whole circuit, soldering the electronic components, and then eventually it works. It's a long process.
Yeah, we had a guy on the podcast a while ago that was making AR headsets for firefighters.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. It outlines the physical objects in the room through the smoke, so they can see what they're doing.
Wow.
And he was talking about how it's really challenging to do hardware, because he was like worked in software for a long time and moved into hardware for this venture. And he was saying that it's a big learning curve when suddenly moving a button by 1 inch costs you $100,000.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. No, I completely agree. Plus, it's software has a lot of wide use cases, right? Once once you're good at a certain language, you understand the basics of how things work. You have a wide variety of industry that you can contribute into. So that happened. I after my engineering, I went to the US. I did my master's, and there also I chose electrical engineering first, and then moved to computer science. because what happened was I was there, and it was a 2 years course, 2 year course, and I realized that this is too long. I mean, I have nothing else to do other than study, so I was like, let me do it faster. And then while that was happening, I started applying for the graduate assistantship or on-campus jobs, but never nothing worked out. And fortunately, at that time, I had a mentor who helped me, saying, "Hey, you know what? Why don't you try programming? And there are a lot of jobs available." It worked out well. I learned a lot. I did this 30-day online crash course. And then I got a job when I was in the 6th month of my master's program. It was a full-time job, so I had to like really balance it well. And I think that's how it started. Then I started as a developer, started with the C code, then quickly moved into web development because that was the hot thing, in the late 2000s. Like, oh wow, okay, web-based software or basically websites. And there I started, first I built a lot of tools, as front end, back end. Then I started getting interested in how servers work, how backend systems work, database systems work. So then moved into systems engineering. At that point, DevOps wasn't coined as a term. From there, moved on to various other jobs, and then moved on to a boutique firm. It was a very small software firm, handful of people. And there I joined as a head of technology, from like senior developer to directly head of technology. It was small, so obviously titles were fancy, right?
Yeah.
But what that helped me do is there I had to make my own decisions. I had to make decisions on how something looks, where something goes, which tool to use, what libraries to use, guide people. I was also playing the pseudo product head role because I used to talk to the clients, listen to their requirements, design something. I learned how to do mockups, learned about the basics of user experience, that it does matter. When you're working on terminal, nothing matters, only black and white matters. So I think from there I moved on to the world's largest, one of the world's largest event management software company. And that was a great journey for me, because after I came in, the business grew almost 500% in the 4 years I was there. So there I also worked as head of technology, building products. I started having some product managers working with me. I built the DevOps function. We also grew a lot. In late 2009, 10s, cloud was the next big thing, and we were facing, unfortunately, we were facing scaling problems, scaling issues. And we're like, okay, let's move to cloud. And I was like the person responsible, the brain behind moving the full system to cloud. And the requirement given to us was that since it's an event management software, a SaaS software, you cannot have any downtime. It has to be zero downtime. And it's like, okay, let's figure that out, how that works.
That's crazy. That's really cool that you were able to get to that, like a head of technology role at the smaller company, and then just progress to continue in that at that level at the larger company. That's awesome. That's something I think about in like the trajectory of my career, where like we're like a 6-person company, and I have a lot of decision making that I do at like our size. I'm always wondering, like, will anyone even care after this? Like, or do I have to go prove it at and start from the bottom at a larger company if I decided to do that,
No, I agree. I completely agree. And, I always say this. So when I have the next generation come in and chat with me, interns who come and chat with me, or even some of my cousins, I always say that, while the big companies are really good, there's Googles and Facebooks of the world, and really good, definitely. See if you can at some point in a career work in a small company in some significant role, because what happens there is that you get hands-on. You get to make mistakes. You get to make really big mistakes, and actually survive. Plus, you get to know about how all the nitty-gritties work, how things are dependent on each other and whatnot. Plus, for me, I'm a citizen of India, and I used to work in the US. So there was this whole H-1B jazz, and literally each and every friend of mine, for them, it was an essential that they get the green card, so they stay in one company forever, for a long period. Sorry, not forever. But for me, that never matters. Like, I don't care. I need to make my career. So I need to keep pushing, keep moving, and I don't really care if I'm in a big company as long as I'm getting really good work to do, and I'm happy, and I can see that I'm progressing. I think that's important.
Absolutely. So tell me how you met the team at Cactus and joined where you're at today.
Yeah, absolutely. So towards the end of 2014, just one fine day, we decided that me, my wife, and we have a daughter, that hey, let's just move back to India. And it was just a spur of the moment decision, like, okay, fine, enough of the US, let's move to India. And then I started talking to a few people, and that's how Cactus happened. And Cactus was a very fun, very, very, very interesting story, because if you think about it, when I joined Cactus, it was a team of 10 to 15 people in tech. And I was at a point in my career that I wanted to now grow significantly in all directions. So it was a very big gamble, if you may, I took, and it worked out pretty amazing. Because as I said, when I joined in, we were 10 to 15 people in tech, and today we are 300, and this is in
Wow.
less than 7 years. Yeah. And it has been a fascinating and a very, very fulfilling experience, and many more years to go. So Cactus, maybe I could talk a bit about what Cactus is. So Cactus, is a collection of many businesses, right? It's not really one business. So we have Editage, we have Cactus Life Sciences, we have Impact Science, PaperPal, so on and so forth. And we primarily work in the academia and the pharma space. And we are one of the very few large companies which are author-centric, which means essentially what we do is we bridge communication gap between research and the world. We help the researcher, the author, disseminate their research to the world, starting from helping them with translation, the subject matter editing, providing them publication support, and to the point, helping the researchers promote their published research to the world. So we are a tech product company. We have many suites of products. So PaperPal is one of the suite, researcher.life and whatnot. So when I joined Cactus, I started as engineering lead. Basically, my official title, I believe, was VP of Engineering, because it was a very small thing. I mean, titles didn't matter. It was anyway a very small tech team. So I was actually writing code. It is so interesting that just yesterday, we having fun on Slack, and someone posted a meme about merging a branch to production after a long time. And I remembered in March of 2015, which is 3 months after I joined, I made a large commit to production, and it was almost 500,000 lines of code changed. And obviously, I didn't write them. A lot of people wrote them, but I was actually doing the merging together. So we were like 7 people on the computer. I was doing the merging of lines, asking people, "Is this the right line? Not right line?" Pushing it out. So I started with that. I started playing like the tech head kind of a role. Then again, similar thing happened, because we had to grow, right? And that's what we started building a large team. So we were doubling every few months, right? We never really had a formal product management functions. We built that. We built the UX function. I built DevOps as a function, QA automation as a function, and set standards on how to do user research. So around 2016, we started rebuilding our app, internal app. And one of the things that we did is followed the standard of how things should work. How do you build a product? Follow it to the T. So we started doing user research, user interviews, and whatnot. So that's what happened. Obviously, things progressed. Cloud happened, and many more things. Towards the end of 2018, we decided that, hey, as a business, tech is going well, other businesses are going well. We need to start leveraging technology much more. We need to start leveraging the bleeding edge, the AI, machine learning, and that's where that happened. That's where for me my focus started going into AI. So a large part of my, like almost 100% of my focus was in building the AI team. Started with like a person and a half, like 1.5 people, me and one of the devs. We started building it. A lot of failures along the way, but fortunately things worked out well. And today we have a AI and machine learning group called Cactus Labs, which is generating a lot of IP for us, which is generating a lot of AI solutions, which then those solutions are being used by other businesses within Cactus to push their business up. And plus, many of these solutions that we've built are being packaged into products under the umbrella term PaperPal and Researcher.life and whatnot. So that's how Cactus really happened. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. So I know that Cactus started by like helping scientists get their papers and work published. Is that still a big part of the business today?
Yes, absolutely. It is still a big part of the business, and it will continue to be a big part of business for foreseeable future.
So do you have like so how does that work exactly? What is your role there? Do you provide like subject matter experts that like help with peer review, or like what's the value add that Cactus does for these scientists that are trying to get published?
Sure. No, absolutely. I think from a very high level perspective, if I have to say, is that we provide the language support, right? So as a researcher, as an author, you're good at your subject, you're good at your experiments, you're good at your research. But that research has to go out somewhere where people can have access to it, right? So it's like you build a product, but that product is useless until you can market it in the right channels. Similarly, with a researcher, for them, for a research to have any credibility, it has to be published into a journal first. So that's where we come in. We take the research. If it is not in the English language, we translate it from a native language to English language. Then we have editors who work on the paper to edit it. Then we have formatters who will format it for the journal requirements and then get it helped and then send it back to author, who can then get it published into a journal. And here, the translators and the editors are the key components, are the key value adds, right? Because if it's a paper on cancer, we will need to. It is essential, or it is mandatory that an oncologist is editing the paper, right? Because the subject matter matters a lot. So you cannot have a architectural major edit a social sciences paper, or you cannot have an anthropology guy edit a neurology paper. It's just different subject areas, very different tone, language, understanding. So that's where the whole value add comes in.
That's really cool. So recently, I actually got to interview an executive from this company called Sophos. That they're a cybersecurity company, and they do a lot of really cool stuff stopping ransomware. But one thing that was really interesting about them is they actually have like this whole website separate from their main website, dedicated to publishing scholarly papers on AI. And they like encourage their in-house experts to do research and publish it. And he was saying that like you were saying about Cactus Labs, encouraging your in-house people to do research on AI obviously like creates a lot of valuable IP for the company. And it also was like, he said, it draws in like really smart people that are doing academic research that want to come in and join the company because of the opportunity to get published. And so I was curious, do you guys help any of your internal subject matter experts get published themselves?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we've not been very good at that because we are still growing. We are at an inflection point now, because early on when we went to the business saying, okay, we need to put money in AI, obviously from any business angle is, okay, where's the outcome, right? And in order to push for the outcome, we have to focus on the outcome. So the last couple of years, which is the first couple of years of AI, we were focusing a lot on outcome, building the team, building the capabilities. And now we have started. So we already have an intern who's not an intern now. Now he's one of the key members of our team who actually wrote his thesis with us. So he was in his PhD program. He wrote his thesis with us, got it published while he was working with us on our solution. And we are also currently looking for researchers who can actually do that. So I think the next couple of years will be that where we have acquired critical mass, and now we will move into more research and actually giving back to the community.
That's really cool. So what are some of the cool things that you've seen come out of Cactus Labs and the research there?
Oh yeah, so Cactus, I think we are when we started, right? The thing was that how do we leverage AI to make a difference in business, right? And we know that for 20 years, Cactus has been in the business of editing papers, editing literature. So we have collected massive amounts of data, our own IP, our editors making an edit. So we said, let's start using that in order to build an AI that can edit. So that is our number one contribution to the company and to the world, where we have leveraged NLP, we have leveraged deep learning, language models and whatnot to generate something called an automated editing system, which will take a unedited piece of text in English and emits a grammatically correct, structurally correct piece of text. So that has been our number one win. And we've got many more. So we also have something called concept extraction, where we take piece of text and we extract key concepts, semantically correct concepts out of the text, and create a user fingerprint or a text fingerprint, which can then be used to map or match similar literature. So that's what we've built. We are a lot into big data today. So we are collecting all the world's intelligence. A better way to say it is that we're collecting all the world's published papers, whichever is available online, open access, and we are creating a big data lake, and we are running a lot of intelligence on top of it. And we have a lot of plans to run again a lot of AI on top of it to generate value for the business. So those are some of the things we've done. We also built some image recognition system using YOLO and other libraries, where we would detect birthmarks, tattoos on human skin to check for consent. If you're using that image in a paper, you have to check for consent. So we built that. And and we've also tinkered a little bit with AR. Again, that was more of a fun project, side project kind of a thing. It could become big, but we don't really have bandwidth to productize it today.
That's awesome. So did you have a extensive background in AI when you kind of started implementing it at Cactus, or how'd you get started with it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So it was very interesting journey. So I have no background in AI, but fortunately I've done my master's. I was into computer science, so I understand a lot of the basics of computer science, basics of math. That goes into building AI, right? So when we started, the thinking was that instead of, as a leader, you always have to make a decision: should you buy or should you build, right? And buy versus build is always a question. So when we did start at, as I said, 1.5 member team, the thinking was instead of building, let's just buy. Let's just work with a consulting agency who can provide us AI experts and help us build something. And that's what we did. That's what we started with, but that never worked out for various reasons. Because again, it's an emerging. It is still an emerging industry. So there are a lot of players in the market who are not really AI experts. They're more of an if-else statement experts. But so that didn't work out. So then we started working with universities. So we partnered with one of the universities in the US, and worked with their head of computational linguistics, and worked with him and his team to build something. And when that was while that was happening for me, I had to do a lot of learning myself. So reading papers, learning about multidimensional algebra, linear algebra, probability. There are really good courses on Stanford and MIT on OpenCourseWare on how probability and statistics work. So I did all of that online. Went through the Coursera course and whatnot, just so that I can speak the language of the people that I hire, of the people that I work with. So I think that's what happened. I personally haven't really written a lot of code. Early on, I did. Early on, we did, because we were using something called PyTorch, which is a very, at least at that point, very, how would I say it, unsophisticated library. So you had to really tinker around with architecture. But yeah, so that's how the journey came to be.
That's really cool. So what advice would you have for smaller companies that are looking to start building out an AI team from that experience?
Yeah, I think what matters is get couple right people. So we failed at that. So early on, we hired few people who were not right, and that also slowed us down. But then, fortunately, we got one or two good people, and those people really helped us. So don't fret on investing in the right people. It will be a large investment, but let that happen. And also, whoever's leading it. So any business leader. So I was a business leader leading it at that point. It is essential that it is not one of the many goals or one of the many targets that they have. It is essential that for the business leader who's leading it, it is their singular focus. Because once it is set up, you can definitely move to other things. But when you're setting it up, it is essential to have the right focus and continuous focus and absolute persistence. Very, very necessary, because there will be many failures on the way. AI is not easy. Making a sample AI, making something that works in test is very easy. But actually scaling it to production such that you're actually generating money out of it, that is hard, because it requires a lot of feedback loops and a lot of changes in workflow, to accommodate AI. So AI is not like a drop-in replacement. You have to accommodate it. You have to make sure that you are changing as a business in order to leverage it well.
That makes sense, especially just how difficult it is to productize. Because when you're just like experimenting and trying to iterate and make it better, like if there's failures, that's fine. You just iterate on it. But once you're charging people money, then if there's failures, you got to answer for it, and that seems stressful. But so, is it cool if I get into a couple leadership questions now before we get towards the end? Cool. So one thing I was curious to ask you, because you were talking about working in different like head of technology roles and now CTO. How would you say that those two job titles are like different day to day?
Yeah, they are a lot different, right? So actually, the role of a CTO, right? The title of CTO does not really have a very strict global definition, right? And it should not. It is essential that the title may remain the same, but the role has to keep changing. So as I said, when I first joined in, I was actually playing the tech head role. When I was actually writing code, I was helping people, select the right libraries to use, the right tools to use. I remember doing a session, not one session, multiple sessions on how to use Git, how to version your code well, how to deploy it well, stuff like that. So it's very deep down. Hands-on, and then I moved into building various types of teams that are required for a successful tech company, right? So technology is one thing, software development is one thing, but you need QA, you need automation of QA, you need product management, you need user experience team, you need all these teams in order to build a successful tech company. So that was the role I was playing. Then, while the title remained the same, the role I was playing of basically was a business consultant to build a tech company, right? Then as we progressed, I was playing the role of how to expand well. So expanding comes in two flavors, right? One is you keep hiring people internally, or you start hiring externally, which is you outsource. So I think one of the years I focused strictly, or not strictly, but focused a lot on how to outsource well. So now today we have 7 different agencies that work with us where we outsource a lot of things, the smaller parts. And setting that up was difficult because then you don't have to play a tech role. I mean, tech, yes. You also have to play a business role again. You have to negotiate pricing. You have to negotiate contracts, and so on and so forth. Then I think one of the other roles I've played is a sales role, so sales tech roles or a sales tech integration role, where I used to meet with the publishers. I've traveled to almost all the top 4 publishers' offices, spoken with them multiple times online on how can we integrate our software, our tools within their ecosystem, and why should we do that? Not so much about the act of integration, which is the tech guy's job, but also playing the tech partner role. So that is another role I played, and I have played. And then finally, the AI head role, where building the AI function. And there again, I went back to being hands-on early on. So I was really hands-on, writing code, going to forums and figuring out solutions, contacting the developers on GitHub, asking them for help on, okay, we are stuck, we can't deploy, the things aren't scaling, we are not able to utilize the full GPU, all those things. So I think that's how the roles differ. And I always believe this, that at a leadership level, your evolution will make the company evolve, and it's not vice versa. You have to evolve, and your evolution will basically push the company to evolve in the right direction, and that is very, very critical.
It sounds like in your time there, creating all these different functions that you've talked about, most recently AI function, it's like kind of a cycle of being really hands-on and then slowly stepping back. But I imagine in those early days of starting up a new function, when you're really hands-on, failure obviously is a big part of it, and a positive part of it, because you're iterating and creating something new. But as a leader, when there is a big failure, how do you communicate that to your team, like gracefully?
Yeah. So that's a term I use a lot at work. If you do fail, please fail gracefully. It is okay to fail. Not just okay to fail, it is necessary to fail. Because if you have all the wins all the time, you're not really building the right thing. You're not
pushing hard enough.
You're not pushing hard enough. You don't have the resistance. So it's okay to fail, because then you're taking risks. So I failed a lot in my life always, right? Starting from the first job, starting from studies, jobs, etc. And I have not always failed gracefully. And over the years, I've learned how to do that. So as I said, it's essential to fail gracefully. It is essential to be aware of what is happening around you. It is essential to own your own failures. It is very, very essential to own that. Okay, I failed. Take the responsibility of the mess, and figure out how to clean it up. Ask for help. A lot of times it does happen that you don't ask for help. You are standing in the middle of the road, staring at the headlights, and like, okay, now what do I do? So don't do that. Be aware, be mindful that you're not doing that. You're failing actively, and talk about it. So fortunately, at Cactus, we have the culture. We have a very good culture in terms of failures. It's okay to fail as long as you're learning from it, as long as there's reflection. So even Ray Dalio used to always say, and he does say, one of his principles, that pain plus reflection is progress. So if you have the reflection after you have failed, that's where you make your progress. And lastly, I think it's very, very essential to make yourself aware that understand what is in your control. What is your circle of influence, and where you can't influence, ask for help and figure it out.
That is excellent advice, man. Thank you for sharing that. So before we wrap up, is there anything that we didn't get to touch on today that we want to make sure we get out to the world? Like anything you want to shout out for Cactus? What do you want people to remember?
No, I think from a leadership side, it is what I would say is that as a CTO, as a head of technology, think of your role as a QA. You are the QA. You bring in the vision. You help verify the vision. You help your second line, your third line, your team members commit to the vision. And once they're committed, they will have accountability. You give them accountability. You give them the power of decision making, and you eject yourself from it. You don't become part of the design. Don't become part of the solution all the time. And that's how I have seen the teams grow very well. When you're in a startup, that's opposite, right? When you're a startup, you have to be part of the solution. You have to be part of the design. You have to be hands-on and make things happen. But at some point, you got to scale up. And when you do scale up, you have to figure out how do you let it go and observe from a 30,000 feet. And you come in, you test it out, and you move out. So I think that's very critical to grow, and has always helped me grow the teams. So even Cactus Labs, we started as a 1-member team. Now we're about 50 people. The reason we are able to do that is because even my second line, who are the VPs of the organizations, that's why I always tell them that just eject yourself. Don't make yourself part of the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So are you guys hiring? Should people reach out to you if they're looking to join your team?
Yes, absolutely. We are hiring. If you are a tech person, and if tech interests you, if AI interests you, front end, back end, DevOps, everything, we're hiring for literally all positions, including product management, user experience, user research. So we're looking to grow our team. We want to grow our team drastically in the next couple of years. So definitely, please reach out to me. Sure.